AFC South predictions. Alex, let's start with the Houston Texans. This team really surprising people last year. As we know, getting the offensive rookie of the year and CJ Stroud, new coach, comes over, really revitalizes his team. They've added some pieces, though, here, Alex, and I like what they've done this offseason, bringing in Daniil Hunter, bringing in Stephon Diggs, bringing in Joe Mixon to add some pop to the running back room. And one of the most overlooked additions that I mentioned in an earlier podcast episode this summer, Danico Autry on the defensive line as well. I think this team is really poised to take that next step in the AFC South.
Yeah, I mean, everything is set up for CJ Stroud, like you said, to take these next steps and build on what he did last year. But I really want kind of focus on the defensive side a little bit more because I think offensively, adding Stephon Diggs, that's a huge thing. Joe Mixon, I'll get to those in a minute. But the defensive pieces that were added, specifically Daniil Hunter, you bring in another guy that takes a lot of pressure off of Will Anderson, a guy that can put, if they decide to go 4-3 or 3-4 and be multiple, he can put his hand in the dirt and he can do from linebacker. He'll have 10.5 sacks with his hand in the dirt, 10.5 sacks as a linebacker. I think fortifying that front four, because they did lose Christian, drawing a blank on the middle linebacker's name from last year. So they're going really young at the linebacker position, period. So you're talking about Aziz Ashir, Jake Hansen, Henry Toto. That's very young at the linebacker position. So that front four is going to be very important as well as that back four. So you have Derek Stingley Jr. who's in prime to have another breakout season in Jalen Petrie. And then you do bring in Kamari Lassiter, who's a rookie out of Georgia. Those guys, we know those are hard-nosed guys. But I think the improvement on defense is a lot. And then offensively, obviously, I don't think we need to say too much about Stephon Diggs. But I think one of the bigger things is that running back room that we really need to pay attention to. You talk about Joe Mixon, but also if Damian Pierce is healthy, that's a nice 1-2 punch that, if Joe Mixon should go down, we've seen Damian Pierce when healthy, what he can do. But a guy that's hung on and that's had some knee injuries that would be a nice change of pace and a good third down back, and Cam Akers made this team as well. And if he's healthy, losing what they lost last year in the running back room, I think he can easily step in and be that third down back and the guy with a little bit of wiggle in that backfield to add another dimension.
Yeah, and I also like that they were able to re-sign Dalton Schultz, tight end, of course, to a 3-year deal. Nice move there by Nick Caserio, the general manager. They've done a really nice job with this team the last couple of years, put them in this position. And the big move, of course, trade for Stephon Diggs. Look, I think Stephon Diggs is a better fit in Houston than he was in Buffalo. And here's why. We know Josh Allen is really at his best when he's scrambling around, off script, and making big plays. Stephon Diggs is actually one of the best route runners, one of the most precise route runners in the NFL. He's going to benefit from a CJ Stroud style of quarterback who's more rhythm and timing based in his throwing. So now you've got a wide receiver and quarterback that I think pair really well here with the accuracy that we've seen from Stroud, throwing on time, throwing with anticipation. I think it's really going to bode well for Stephon Diggs. I expect a big year from him and a big year from this offense in general. I think Houston, like I said, is in a really prime position to become the class of this division for years to come here. Now, look, the season under win total for the Houston Texans right now, Alex, is 9.5 wins. What are you taking here from a betting standpoint? Are you going over or under on 9.5 with the Texans?
Well, before I'll do that, I'll take a victory lap because I said that during the season last year, I did say that Stephon Diggs would not be on the Buffalo Bills. I know I made a lot of crazy hot takes, but that was one that hit, so I'll take a victory lap on that. And as of right now, I was teetering on 9 or 10. I have the Houston Texans going 10-7 this year.
I like it, and look, when it comes to victory laps, I'm going to join you because I said this team was going to win 8 games last year. before the season started, and people thought I was crazy. I was one of the few people that thought this team could really pop and show some big time improvement, and they did. I think they continue to show that level of improvement. I'm going to take the under, though. And look, this isn't a shot at Houston here. I think they get to 9 wins, which just falls just below that over under total. I think they're very competitive. I think they're battling for the division and possibly a wild card. But there's something you always talk about, Alex, and I think it really rings true. Now people have tape on CJ Stroud. Now it's time to see what he can do his sophomore season. Can he follow up that great rookie year and add to it? I think he can. Don't get me wrong. I think he's shown he's that kind of quarterback, but it's going to be tough for year two, even with an improved team. But with that being said, they're going to be a fun team to watch, Alex. So let's move along here to the Indianapolis Colts, another interesting team in this division. Now, they lost Zach Moss, running back. Of course, Gardner Minshew moves on to your Raiders. And really, the big addition here is their quarterback coming back. They had a young quarterback, Anthony Richardson, who they took early in the first round last year, got injured, missed most of the year, but he really flashed some talent and had this fan base excited last year, and he's going to be back. What do you expect from the Colts this year and some of the things they've done this offseason?
Well, I'll say this one underrated move that people don't talk about it. Joe Flacco coming over to this team. Anthony Richardson has all the tools in the world, but there's a hell of a lot more upside than there is for what we know. Remember, he only had 7 games. Well, he had a full season for Florida 2 years ago. However, as a Florida fan, and no jokes because we look crappy right now, but when we saw Anthony Richardson, he was good for those first 7 games coming out the gate beating Utah. But then as they got to 7, people started to catch on, similar to the point that you were talking about before. People caught up, and he could not take in more of the playbook as needed to be in the output to continue what they had started. So they faltered towards the end of the year. This is going to be okay. You were able to sit a good portion of last year, get into the playbook. The kid can learn. He's a pure leader, but I think a guy like Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson is very receptive to coaching. That's a key thing for any player, but specifically at the quarterback position, he's receptive to coaching. So you're getting coaching from the actual head coach and OC and the quarterback coach. And then you add in Joe Flacco, veteran, and a guy that knows his position and is just there to support you and almost acting like another de facto quarterback coach. That will help him a lot because I think a lot of what's going to happen with them is riding on how much more of the playbook that Anthony Richardson consume and how much more can they put into play. Now, they're very young all over the field in terms of the offensive weapons. Jonathan Taylor, if he's healthy, we know what that is. Michael Pittman just got re-signed. He showed that he's a consistent player. I don't think he's a true number one. You have Josh Downs, and you add A.D. Mitchell. And, oh, by the way, so they're deep at the wide. They probably have one of the better wide receiver rooms because even Alec Pierce, who popped last year, he's actually he's a backup. He's second string because those are right now the projected starters. Defensively, they just hit a lot of, I've always heard this about the Indianapolis Colts. They don't get that guy, but they hit a lot of doubles and triples. They may not hit the home run, but a lot of doubles and triples. They don't miss. So when you look at that defensive line with Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, and then you bring in Lyle Latu, who I believe if he doesn't have the injury, he's a higher pick, but I believe he is the best pure pass rusher coming out in the draft. Now they're a little thin on the back end, meaning the back four, but hopefully if that front seven is what we think they are, they should do well. And a lot of it again is riding on Anthony Richardson and his health and his ability to take in more of the playbook and have that output then on the field. The only thing I will say, I wish they did go and get a tight end. I thought that would do a lot of wonders for Anthony Richardson, but nonetheless, there's a lot of weapons on this team. However, right now, because he's coming in technically as a rookie, I have them going 7-10.
Yeah, I like it, Alex. And I think Chris Ballard, to your point, has done a really nice job of kind of continuing to build this team up with the draft and with some free agency moves. Like you mentioned, they re-signed Michael Pittman, slot corner Kenny Moore, making sure that this team has some weapons around this young wide receiver. To your point, I actually loved their early draft picks and Latu. You mentioned that this guy is absolutely incredible. And if he didn't have the health issues, I think it would have been a top 5 pick. I think he's that kind of talent. The only reason he slid was the health concerns. So fingers crossed, if he can stay healthy, I think he can be an impact player day one. We both were really big fans of AD Mitchell coming out of Texas. I think that adds some pop to this wide receiver room as well. I think the secondary is a big question mark for this team. This is a team that Chris Ballard tried to make the trade for L'Jarius Sneed, wasn't able to secure that deal. So I think they're going to be a little thin there. But overall, I think this is a team that's headed in the right direction. I'm going to take a look here. Their season over under win total, Alex, is 8.5. Vegas is a little bullish on them. You're taking the under, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'll take an under.
Yeah, I am too. I am too, Alex. I think that they're going to be competitive. I think they could win 7 or 8 games, but going above that might be a little tough for me. I'll take the under as well. Let's move along here, Alex, to the Jacksonville Jaguars. This team, look, they've got to do something here, and it's not the team that I'm talking about. It's Trevor Lawrence. It's time for this guy to become the guy that we expected when he came out of Clemson. We've been saying it on this podcast, PGF Nation, all you that have been following us and listening to the audio pod, checking out our YouTube stuff. We love you guys, of course. But look, we've been saying it for a while now. This guy is really talented. We know that. But talent only takes you so far. It's time to become the franchise quarterback that we expected when you came out of Clemson. And so far, I have not seen enough from this guy, Alex.
Well, the first thing I'll point out, I'll go, even though I do have points to make on Trevor Lawrence, I think you've all heard me enough talk about Trevor Lawrence. But I think the biggest issue with this team, which is going to conflict with what I have to say at the end, but the biggest issue was losing defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell. This was the guy that went to bat for Josh Allen when the team was saying they didn't want to pick up the 5th-year option. They wanted to trade him. And the defensive staff, led by Mike Caldwell, said, no, we can fix him. There's some things that we can do here. And lo and behold, they go into the season, and Josh Allen turns out that they were right. He had 17 and a half sacks last year. 17 and a half sacks with that defensive staff. And what do they do in the offseason? They fired the entire defensive staff that rebuilt him. And also, let's be also fair, they also unlocked Trayvon Walker, who had 10 sacks as well. So they look to be headed right. Exactly, finally pop. So they look to be headed in the right direction. Then you fire the entire defensive staff for whatever reason, and now you bring in a brand new defensive staff, and they're moving from a 3-4 where they were successful now to a 4-3. So now you're telling Trayvon Walker, who actually has the size to put his hand in the dirt, but perhaps that may not be the best role for him. And Josh Allen, who's a speed rusher, more of your Dwight Freeney's, but doesn't have the moves to get to the quarterback. Now you're moving him to put his hand in the dirt again. So now you're switching them back to that. So I have some issues there. To the offensive side, I love the drafting of Brian Thomas Jr. He's the guy I still maintain. He's the best will be the better player throughout his career over Malik Neighbors coming out of LSU. So I love him. I like the pickup of Gabe Davis. Christian Kirk coming back if he's healthy. That's a huge target for Trevor Lawrence. And then, of course, Evan Ingram. So I like the wide receiver room. I like even the quarterback room, right? We're talking about Trevor Lawrence. Step up. You bring in Mac Jones, bring him back home. He's from Jacksonville. I like the running back room of Etienne Bigsby and Dearness Johnson. It's really, like you said, a lot of this is on Trevor Lawrence and that offensive line. They were forced into taking Antoine Harrison last year because Cam Robinson was suspended. So they had to kind of do that to make up for what they didn't have going in after losing Jawan Taylor and then Cam Robinson. They had no tackle. So I didn't understand why they did that. But they did settle down a little bit. I think the offensive line is going to be a lot better this year. Trevor Lawrence has to take to the coaching and take the steps that he did the previous year when Doug Peterson first came. He has to take those steps. And if he takes those steps, here's a contradiction, which I do believe he will. I have them at 9-8 and making the playoffs.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. To your point, Alex, I think they did make a nice move picking up Mitch Morse at center to help the offensive line out. Darnell Savage, I think, was a really good move that didn't get a lot of attention this offseason, upgrading that secondary, bringing him over from Green Bay. Eric Armstead, look, back half of his career, but still a very good player. I love Brian Thomas Jr. Like you said, we talk about him. Go back to the draft pods, the draft episodes we did on the podcast if you want to kind of hear a more in-depth breakdown of his game. But we both really like his game. I think this is a team that's had a really busy offseason. I think they've made some nice deals here to try to upgrade this team. And I think that it's really put up or shut up time for this team. I really do. Because right now, with what we saw from CJ Stroud and this Houston team and the trajectory that they're on right now, they could really start to pull away from Jacksonville when just a couple years ago, after they got Trevor Lawrence and then they bring in Doug Peterson, we were all kind of thinking this is going to become their division. It kind of felt like this was going to be Jacksonville's division for the next 10 years, and it's slipping away from them quickly. And I think it really comes down to this coaching staff and Trevor Lawrence taking that next step. I just look, you can only make so many excuses up for this guy. It's time to put up or shut up for him. And I really think that this is a pivotal year for him in the trajectory of his career in this team and where they're headed. I think there's a ton of pressure on the Jaguars this year, and no one's really talking about them that much as being a pressure team, but I really think they need to get to the playoffs, and he needs to take that next step.
Absolutely. Wait, what's your prediction?
So let's see here. I'm going to pull up their season over-under win total, according to Las Vegas, of course, is 8.5 wins. They're kind of right there on that fringe, and boy, I'm going to take the under on this one. I am, because I'm starting to have real doubts about this quarterback. And I hate to say that because, look, I loved this kid coming out. I think we all did.
Yeah.
He was such a good player in college. He was such an unbelievable prospect. He has all the talent, and we've seen it. We've seen it at the college level. We've seen it at the pro level. He has the talent. Does he have the dog in him? That's what I'm starting to actually question here. Is this guy really have that dog? Does he really want to be great? I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if maybe that's the missing piece to this puzzle for him. And is that's what's held him back? Because there has been some reports about his quote unquote love for the game, his drive. And we know the great ones, the real great ones, it goes way beyond your skill set. It goes into the playbook, the studying, the film, the preparation, the reps, and all the things that the great ones do to really take their game to that level. I'm starting to wonder if this guy has it. So big year for Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence. Now, the Tennessee Titans, a little bit of an afterthought here in the AFC South, Alex, but they've got a young quarterback that flashed in Will Levis, a guy that I actually liked a little more than you did coming out of the draft, but we talked about this guy a lot, had the talent, had some things mechanically that he had to work on. But I liked what I saw from him in year one, and I think Titans fans have a reason to be a little bit optimistic if they can continue to build around this kid.
Yeah. So, and I think, my I guess my biggest pushback, just to go back a little bit, really wasn't that I didn't think he was a good prospect. It was that they had him as a top 5 pick, a top 10 pick, and I pushed back on that. So I think where he got drafted is perfect to where he got drafted in the second round. So, but with that being said, the staff there has done a great job. You already had DeAndre Hopkins, but then you double down on weapons from. You go and you get Calvin Ridley. You go and you get Tyler Boyd. You also go and get Tony Pollard to go with Tajay Spears. So I think their key weapons at the running back and wide receiver positions are good. And then maybe some way, shape, or form, Treylon Burks can figure out how to play football to the level that they thought he could when they drafted him behind those guys, and understand that, look what they not only went and got one, they got two. So they pushed you to the bench on purpose, sir. So it's time for you to step up. We weren't high on J.C. Latham, but from what I understand, what's going on in camp, he's looking better. We just thought there were better prospects out there, to go with what they did last year with Skoronski, who we knew was a guard. I wasn't high on J.C. Latham, really not too much high on a lot of Alabama tackles coming out lately. Every now they're kind of hit or miss for me, and I am a Scorn Raider fan, so take that with a grain of salt as well. I think the biggest addition to this team in the draft was really in the middle. And I'm talking about one person, you know, big 6'4", 362-pound Tavondre Sweat. You take that guy and you put him next to Jeffrey Simmons in that 3-4, you're not running on this team. That's one thing I can say because those are two immovable objects. Let's start there. So that front three, because they run a 3-4, that front three is going to be strong at the point of attack. So you're going to have, and Sebastian Joseph Day is not a slouch, especially with those two guys on the line. Now, they made the trade for Ernest Jones, Kenneth Murray, who I did like coming out of Oklahoma. Unfortunately, he's just been oft injured, but when he plays, he's good. Now there are edge rushers and Harold Landry, who has been able to pop here and there, but Arden Key, a guy out of LSU with a lot of potential, a lot of speed. I think he's found a place to stick there, so he's serviceable. And then you get to the defensive backfield. Now, Quandre Diggs, now we know they made the trade for Ladarius Sneed, so I do like that to put somebody back there that's I don't want to say he's a guy, but that's a guy that knows how to play ball and will be in position to help out that defensive backfield. And remember, let Kevin Byard walk on and go, so they're young at the safety position, even though they brought in Quandre Diggs. And if I'm not mistaken, they brought in Jamal Adams to me, who you should probably just really put at linebacker as far as I'm concerned, the 3-4. Maybe that works. Maybe that works better for them. But I like what the team did. I like that they set them up. So my thought process on them is twofold. I have this team going 5-12. However, if you're telling me you go 5-12 and Will Levis goes for 3,700 yards to 4,000 yards and about 25 to 30 with about 12 to 15 interceptions and that's 65%, this is a winning season because now you feel I've found my quarterback and the offensive line held. So now I just need to go figure out these other pieces and we just grow from here. Because that's the whole thing. It's not that I think sometimes people get lost in the fact of what you may see, and we just use recency bias and what you see with CJ Stroud. They went from 3-13 to 10-7. They made the playoffs. They're not good now. It's not always like that. Sometimes it's a slow burn. And it's okay to be a slow burn as you are now building and what Carthon and those are doing in the front office. You're building the team, and it's okay to slow build the team. You don't have to come out, off 100. Sometimes you need to go start at 0 to get to 100. You don't need to go from 0 to 100 in 6.5 seconds or whatever it is. So I like the slow burn. So it's twofold. It may be 5-12, but if Will Levis does what we think he could possibly step up and do because he flashed a lot, and you tell me I get that type of season from Will Levis, then this is a win. I won this season because now the hard part is done and finding a quarterback. I could really go focus on the other things around that.
Yeah, I think you hit it out of the park, Alex. I completely agree with you here because it is all about Will Levis right now with this team because, look, we're not expecting them to be great. Nobody's expecting them to be great. I don't even think the most optimistic Titan fans expect this team to be great. Can that quarterback show you that he's a franchise quarterback to build around? That's really the big question for this team. And when you've got a quarterback that you think could be a guy and you have him on that rookie deal, you go and spend money. And they did. They spent a lot of money this offseason, and they really added some pieces around this guy to try to bring him along. To your point, Rand Carthon and the GM for this team. Look, we didn't love, like you said, didn't love the JC Latham pick, but there were a lot of analysts who did like him, and this was a very good offensive tackle class. So there was a couple of guys that we liked better, but he still could end up being a very good player. I like the additions they made for this team. The Jerry Sneed, we know, is a very good corner. That's going to help out that secondary that's been hurting the last couple of years. And I like some of the pieces they've added up front to help protect this young quarterback because he was really under fire last year. You bring in Lloyd Cushenberry, offensive tackle, of course, Latham. So they've addressed some of those issues here. That's really going to be the big question, though, is all about Will Levis this year, and does he take another step forward? I think, if nothing else, it's going to be a fun watch to see what he does because he is an exciting young quarterback with some serious athletic ability for sure. Now, let me see here. They're over-under season win total. Vegas has them at 6.5 wins, Alex. What do you think about the Titans? You said 5. Are you going under there?
Yeah, I went under at 5-12.
Yeah, I'm going to go I'm going to go over. I'm going to
Okay.
go over. I'm going to go over with the Titans. I think they get to 7 wins. I think they get to 7 wins. I think Will Levis does take that next step. And I think next offseason, when we're making these predictions, suddenly there's a buzz around this team because I think year 2 is going to be a big step for Will
Yeah,
Levis.
I agree on that. And I'll say this with Tennessee, I'm staying away from them. I'm going on the under with the betting. And I also stayed away from all of them in fantasy because most of us had a fantasy draft this weekend for close those out. I didn't draft not one Tennessee player. I said, no way. I'm not taking any chances.
Hey, sometimes when it comes to fantasy, you got to buy shares of certain teams, and that's the same thing with the other end. Sometimes you got to stay away from certain teams as well when it comes to that fantasy game. Guys, we appreciate every one of you guys for checking out these exclusive prediction episodes that we've done here. If you want to hear the other predictions we did, go to the podcast. The link is in the bio. We've got a bunch of other episodes, including some more here on YouTube. We've got another one coming. NFL is right around the corner, guys, and we're excited to keep bringing you more NFL and, of course, college football content as the year goes on.